Okay, we are now recording. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on our Evergreen Forum. We're very honored today to have Tammy Fisher Husson. She's a PhD, which is one of the very impressive things about her, but she's been a school counselor for the past 24 years, as well as an adjunct professor at Seattle Pacific University, a middle school educator, so bless your heart, and as an advanced trainer educator at the Nurtured Heart Approach. So I'm going to also post her website into the chat because she's the author of several books that you need to read. The Nurtured Heart Approach, one's for educators, one is for parents. She's trained hundreds of teachers, parents, and presented nationally at dozens of conferences, many webinars, podcasts, and coaching significant skills to adults. She's bringing out the best version of each person in relationships and increasing academic, social, and emotional success, which is what we definitely need for our students right now. There's more. She's an active member and an annual presenter of the Washington School Counselor Association, keynote speaker at British Columbia School Counselor Conference, and most recently presented at the American Middle, oops, I'm letting people in at the same time, American Middle Level Conferences. Did I get that right? I don't have my glasses.
You did, and now I'm having, my own tech issues here, so hold on.
Okay, and just one more thing while you get your tech issues. She's also presented at the National Evidence-Based School Counseling Conference, which I didn't even know there was that thing. Well, if it's available, I'm sure Tammy's been there and done it, and she's just one of my favorite people, and I love hearing her presentations. So tonight we're going to talk about managing negativity, mindsets and actions that support your well-beings and relationships, and I will put this into the chat for you as we turn it over to Tammy tonight. So thank you, Tammy, from the bottom of our hearts for being here.
You are welcome. I'm struggling right now to move my camera to the right place, so my screen decided to be difficult, but that is the nature of the joy of technology, right? You're moving things and you're like, okay, really just want this to be over here and it won't drag, and I don't know why. So, one more try here. Oh, yes. Yay, third try, works all. Okay. Hi, good evening, you guys. I'm so excited to be here. So excited to have this opportunity to talk to you all. And for those who popped on early, Barbie was saying, I really would love it. I know I love the person who's like, thank God for mute. You don't have to speak aloud, but your voice is really something we've all missed this year. And I think it's part of the reason we're struggling with negativity. So I think just as much a voice as you can add to it. So chat, if that's where you feel like that's comfortable, but simply also there's a raise your hand thing down here at the bottom. I'm raising mine right now, I think. Is it say I'm raising it? Yep. And so you could do that if you just want to add a quick idea to something that's being said, because that's actually how we do our best learning, is when we're collaborative, we came together. Otherwise, you would be just maybe listening to this on your own, and you're going to get more out of it if you engage at this level. So I'm going to see if I'm able to share my screen. Let us see. Here we go. Looks like I might be able to. And let's see if I can. Well, how do I get it to so I can see the part that says start my video? That would be good. Okay, slideshow from the beginning. There you go. You see, can you see that? Does everybody see that? Barbie, can you see the screen there with the title page? Yeah. Well, thanks for that introduction. Really more than you really needed to do. But I mean, basically, I'm just a human being dedicated to supporting relationships. I've been an educator for so long, like 36 years, and I'm just really passionate about positivity. And I think I maybe was wired that way from the beginning. But tonight, my objective is to take us through a couple of core goals. So you walk out here armed with some mindsets that will help your well-being and your relationships, because I think it's something that's really been suffered. I would love you to throw into the chat right now, maybe what brings you here. So I'd love like maybe just, your name and what, well, your name shows up. So what brings you here? Are you a parent? Are you, are you an educator? Are you a mental health worker? Are you just somebody curious, struggling, trying to think about a particular person? But in the chat would be really helpful. And Barbie, won't be able to read the chat while I'm presenting. So if you see things that show up, it would be really great for you to have that information. So the Nurture Heart approach will be a little piece of what we do, but basically it's not a curriculum. It's not anything you have to buy. I mean, great if you want to read a book that helps you understand what it is. But I was trained in 2007 as a certified trainer, and then became an advanced trainer after that. And it just really supports the work I did both in my PhD and in the books I write, and in how I work with my students, with my teachers, with my parents, and with my spouse, and with my in-laws. And so I'm really hoping tonight that you'll just engage at a high level. First of all, it'll keep you awake after a long Tuesday, and you'll feel maybe a little better. And when you exit, armed with some strategies. I want to take a brief moment to give a shout out to my good friend who's on this chat. Delaney, are you here?
Yes, she's here.
Awesome. All right. Awesome. So my girlfriend Delaney Rustin is here. So Dr. Delaney Rustin, she's a primary care doc, but she's also a filmmaker who's written the movie, who was the producer and director and star in the Screenager films, both the first one, Screenagers, and Screenagers Next Chapter, which is about mental health. So if you're not familiar with that, we'll throw some of that in the chat. And I just invited her to just be a part of this because she's familiar with my work and has really supported it, and really gets, I think, at the core, the power of this negativity piece that we're talking about. So a part of me just wants to start about what the heck we have been going through for the last 18 months. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, right? This is just a little, and there may be things down here that are significant to you, or other things that were not listed. And I just want to really acknowledge the real struggle, and just to maybe press pause and really kind of accept what we've been through and what we continue to go through. There's a term that a great article that I was reading, and a doctor wrote calling this basically ambient stress, which is like just in the air, it's around us, and we felt it at a high level. And for some, it's even been toxic stress, how those are defined variably by different researchers and psychologists, is how long you're enduring a high level of stress, right? And the unpredictability of that really makes it a true challenge. And you'll notice at the bottom, I always say this, the darnest thing we ever did was call what we needed to be doing was social distancing, because human beings are social beings, and the last thing we need in life was social distancing. We needed to think, yes, science, we need to be apart from each other. That makes a lot of sense. But socially, we needed to stay connected. We needed to continue to connect with each other on a deeply social, expansive listening ability, so that we could support each other through this time. And with all the challenges, a lot of us didn't with these forced disasters. So I want to acknowledge that this is what we've been going through. And here's the goals for tonight. I'm going to cover kind of 3 foundational understandings, sort of some personal insights I would love you to walk away with, that just have you thinking and noodling about how you view negativity in general and in your own world, and personalizing it yourself, right? And then 4 foundational practices, practical tools I want to give you in our short time together that I'm hoping will really provide you some concrete tools that you can walk away, that you can walk off tomorrow and teach somebody how to use it. I mean, it's really the best way to do anything is to teach it. So, and I really am hoping that you're gonna need a paper and pencil tonight, by the way. So if you don't have one, this might be a great time to grab a piece of paper and a pencil. You will also need, just an open mindset to give things a try. So Barbie, I don't know, in the chat, did we get any insight from some of the reasons that people showed up tonight?
We have some great insight. Several people working in mental health, but they're here because being a human is hard, and grounding themselves is always helpful.
Yeah, man, that's great. Yeah,
Special somebody is just here because they love your brilliant teachings. moving through the next season of life and feeling the negativity that surrounds chance.
Yeah.
Oh, the elections for the school board are maybe a little negative, so they wanted to hear a school counselor talk about negativity.
Yeah, right. Those are really good reasons, right? That our world can be
Yeah.
surrounded by both people, and I love human beings, right? It's pretty hard to. Was talking about this with my one of the division directors at my school, and we were talking about schools in general just being this, relational place all the time, but they're messy, right? And if you work with people, people are messy, right? It's not a pathway. It's not like the computer that's, off and on, although let's be clear, I just was struggling myself tonight with computers. Computers are messy, but I mean, we're not always logical. Our behaviors are not always logical. And so the key thing is to recognize that about ourselves and others, because we're human beings, and kind of lead with some grace. So before we begin, I want to share this quick slide that I borrowed. This is actually sourced from Wayfinder, a fabulous SEL curriculum that comes out of Stanford. It's been 6 years running now. It's in middle schools and high schools, and I just get to pilot it at my school, which is really exciting. And this is one of their online agreements they talk about. So I'm really hoping in our time together that you're going to try not to be on other devices, that you're going to maybe mute to limit your background noises, that you're going to offer grace to my tech issues, that as often as possible, your lovely beings on screen are what we are missing. When I started, I talked about social connection and how critical that is, and seeing faces. I teach 7th and 8th graders. I can get my 4th, 5th, and 6th graders during the remote time to turn their cameras on, but it's like pulling teeth with the older kids. And I coach school counselors and that are graduate students, and they're in the same boat working with their high school students. So the more you can just pop on, if you have a comment, we all need to see a face and know we're not alone in this world, which sometimes feels very lonely. And finally, whenever you're participating, just say your first name and make a visual gesture or raise your hand to get chatted on, or any affirmation that you want to put out there. So those are my community ingredients that I borrowed from Wayfinder. You can find out more about who they are here. So I'm just going to kind of dive in right now. So I just love this little cartoon. I want us to consider our imprint with negative emotions, right? So this is foundational understanding 1. Each person, each one of us, have an imprint that is a response to a fearful situation, to conflict, to anger. And in fact, brain science has found that many years ago, some individuals were more easily upset just on wiring, more sensitive, more empathetic, and others less self-aware, maybe others more self-aware, even when being neurotypical. So the first piece is to kind of understand that that's how we are a little bit. Also, what scientists have discovered is that our brains are actually more wired for negative emotions. Scientists have labeled 8 core emotions. And out of those 8 core emotions, I'd love you to throw in the chat, how many of those 8 core emotions do you believe, I'm going to call them uncomfortable emotions rather than negative. I like to kind of get away from that. Now when I'm looking at the slide, I should not put the word negative. Uncomfortable. What do you think? I'd love to see. What are people saying? Out of 8 emotions identified as core emotions with multiple things underneath it, out of those 8, how many are negative or uncomfortable versus more comfortable? And Barbie, can you give me what are people saying?
Looks like I turned my mute off. 7, 4, 6 of 8.
6 of 8, ding, ding, ding. I give you a
Yes.
lottery ticket. That's what my teachers give to their students to get them involved.
Yes.
They're fake, but whatever. Yeah, 6 out of our 8 emotions that are on the core emotions land on what we would call the uncomfortable side. So it is a little bit about the way we are wired, right? So let's, and I would begin I would attest that maybe we begin to kind of call these emotions maybe uncomfortable or less pleasant, right? Additionally, our response to criticism and judgment, right, is also a challenge. It's based on our life experience, how old we are, how dealing with emotions or conflict has been modeled in our family. And we may have developed habits of responses over the years that have hindered our own self-awareness or regulation, which are 2 key markers of being of well-being, right? Our self-awareness and our self-regulation.
And
I love this
Tammy,
one.
if I can interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah, you may.
I think we can see your notes if you want to hit your display setting, so we just see a big screen.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's just our technical grace tonight.
So let's see, what would I say? Is that it?
Try
No.
that. There it is. Yep, you got it.
Oh,
Nailed
that
it.
worked. Okay. All
Yep,
right. Okay.
congrats. That's it.
Wow. Good to know. Good to know. All right. So that's a part of foundational understanding too. And this one is kind of 2.5, I like to think. And, you know, finally, I think of our own responses to conflict based on the experience we had kind of growing up. You know, when you think of conflict, what words do you think of? Do you freeze? Do you fight? Do you fly? Is there flight? I love my newest one is, do you just fold? You know, there's many reasons people have these responses in conflict, but what we've learned over time is that kind of our unresolved conflicts can really come back in many ways to unaddressed conflicts can still physically live in our bodies and surface in ways that, you know, it's the whole like, oh, go home and kick the dog. Oh, I have a dog. I would never do that. But that concept, right? That or snap at the stranger, or snap at little things that you wouldn't actually normally ever snap at, right? So as you understand that, and this next one, I need you to give me some of your feedback right here. So given this awareness, these foundational understandings, where or with whom in your life do you find it most difficult to stay positive? So
let's hear it.
Yeah, so you may unmute, you can just throw it in the chat, whatever your comfort is right now, you know, so I'd love to hear what it is. And maybe, you know, Barbie, maybe you could put some voice to it. Maybe Delaney, my friend in the chat, could put some voice to it if she's here.
Apparently, people's partners and families are making this very challenging for them.
Mm-hmm.
More families, in-laws.
In-laws, yeah.
Sometimes ourselves, followed by the partner.
I was wondering if somebody would say that, right?
I would second that. It's probably myself, my sister in their own mind. And can you define self-regulation?
Absolutely. Here, I'll give you an example of doing it right now. If you're feeling really tense and really uptight, self-regulation is a space of getting to calm. We can't do it if we don't really have self-awareness that we're dysregulated to start with, right? It's when we're raising our voice and we're kind of off of our kilter, and we're snapping at the driver, we're honking at somebody without, you know, unnecessarily in that moment. And so self-regulation is a core to well-being. It starts with kind of recognizing I'm experiencing a dysregulated moment and then doing something to get to calm, right? I go to breathing. It's my standard way of kind of getting there. I don't spend a lot of time here, so I'm glad that question was asked. I will tell you one of the things that I keep reading about, and I don't, Delaney can add any other ideas she's familiar with, but is breathing in. Actually, your exhale should be longer than your inhale. So you would do like 4 in and 8 out. You want to do a couple right now? Let's just do it, because man, it's been a day. Here we go.
Do it.
In for 4 and out for 8 through your mouth. Again. One more. So positive psychologists and researchers have found that your ability to take those slow, deep breaths is a mindful approach, right? Mindfulness, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. But also that long exhale seems to really provide kind of a releasing of toxins and things within it and allow your air to be kind of a little fresh. And really, when we talk about these habits of mind, these mindsets are habits. And we can actually rewire our responses with focused practice and intention. So this is about self-care, right? So that you can do better with other care, right? You can't, you can't really think about that unless you can't really take care of others unless you are in a space of that. So I'd love you to take a second to think about that situation and just hold it there, that person, that particular situation, that trigger, and maybe dedicate the rest of this hour together to building a more stronger, resilient, gritty self that adopts some new mindsets and strategies, which gives you both permission to feel the truth of what's happening and the power to let it go as well. I'm not saying it's easy. We'll talk about that a little, but it starts by awareness and commitment and intention.
Tammy, this is Blaney. Can you just give some examples? I'm just having a hard time thinking like, what's my most or whatever. So you're just thinking like a relationship with your sister that you're often fighting with or something.
Exactly. Something like where I'm thinking of something where I immediately think negative. My mother's calling me, my in-laws calling me. Of course, they're going to be pushing back. It's a negative situation. You'll see something as we get on further into the practice of like, situation at my work where I just feel like I'm constantly being nitpicked, or by a coworker who I have a struggling relationship and feel like she's always rolling her eyes at me. I'm making all this up if any of my coworkers are on this call, so it's a situation that keeps coming up for you. And maybe it's just the thought of the person or the thought of the conflict. Earlier, when I mentioned conflict, the thought of just having that conversation, kind of triggers in you a response. So just thinking that in your mind, maybe jot it on that piece of paper I said you would need later on tonight, just so that you're thinking, how can I apply this mindset or these approaches? So positive psychology and the work I do with Nurtured Heart approach support these intentions. First of all, our mindsets to see all people as capable of change. This is what we're going to practice tonight. And the reality is I'm going to introduce it tonight, and then you're going to practice it on as you go. Our ability to address our own potential fixed mindsets in relationships to ourselves. I love that people said, I'm really, that I can't do that, or I always respond to that way, or I'll never do that. That's what we call a fixed mindset. It's limiting to your ability to change. And it also limits your relationships moving forward. So you want to try to understand how powerful our belief system is in actual real change. The adults and our mindsets into the adults we work with. So a little bit what my friend Delaney was mentioning, and the youth we support, right? Also, positive psychology really supports the intentions of our ability to coach this mindset of growth into these individuals by three core things. Not joining in the negative labeling or mindsets. So that's super tough, right? You have a coworker or a friend whose their first thing is to come in and complain. How do you step away from that? How do we not join that? This is what we're going to practice a little tonight. Focusing on what's going right and the underlying motivation. Like, rather than this person is bad, what do they really want? What else could be happening for that person? So I can have a more open and loving mindset for that person and see that person as just a human who is, well-intentioned, but maybe not so skilled. Just like me, right? Sometimes. And coaching the challenged adult in this intention by naming what their capacity is. So it's a big intention for the next, 50 minutes we have together or less, but it is where I want to try to get you to think about. And of course, it's just a start of the work you want to do. And there's all kinds of tools that I give you that you can revisit. So toward this end, I want to identify you with these kind of 4 practices that we're going to target, and the practices support those mindsets. Okay. So these are the practices I'm going to go over with our time together tonight. These are the ones that support these mindsets and actions that will actually support your well-being. Identifying emotions and triggers and regulating your feelings are critical to managing any challenge. I'll be talking about that first. Recognizing your true circle of control supports your well-being and encourages both empathy and autonomy. So we'll be doing that practice together as well. Practice number 3, focusing on what is going right, is different than toxic positivity. So I want to make sure we can help get that concept of understanding. That second slide I showed you, our struggle is real. It's been challenging. We can call it out and name it, but we're going to talk about other mindsets of ways we work through it. And it also can help us step away from the wired urge of defensiveness, right? And those 4 F's of fight, flight, freeze, or fold. And finally, reframing the situation for yourself kind of provides a capacity of a lens of capacity and hope. Like, this isn't the way it always has to be. So I'm going to start with the first one, practice number 1. The practice and power of naming your feelings. Okay, I'm not getting paid to promote this. I just want to put this out here. But I find it to be just amazingly simple tool. So identifying your current feeling is an active engagement of being in the moment. I mean, that's what mindfulness is, right? In the moment. We have far more words, as we said earlier, for these uncomfortable feelings than for our comfortable ones, right? But the way that this idea works, this mood meter. So this is Mark Brackett. He's from the Yale Positive Psychology and Emotional Intelligence. Mark Brackett, who wrote a book that just came out during this COVID called Permission to Feel, says that actually plotting your mood moment regularly builds the skills of recognizing, labeling, and regulating emotions to live a healthier, more productive and fulfilling life. So truly, when I heard about this at the start of COVID, I just downloaded this app. It's 99 cents, so it's not like a bank breaker for most people. But what's really powerful about this is it's not just, oh, here's how I'm feeling, right? But it's also the steps behind it. So I want us to take a quick second to do this right now. You don't have to put it in the chat, but in the chat kind of provides a connection with other human beings that are also on this journey and understanding. So if you look at this, you'll see that the mood meter, which people use across schools and I am sure many of you who are in mental health have used this or seen this before, but he plots the emotions in these 4 zones, very similar, actually, if you're familiar with zones of regulation, to the zones of regulation. So from low and high pleasantness to low and high energy. So just take a second to look at these words. I hope they're big enough. If not, throw on your glasses or whatever you need. And identify how you're feeling right now. Could you enter that in the chat right now? I just want to walk you through how this step is. It goes beyond just naming your feeling. So there's one more part to it. So just name the feeling is the first part.
We have grateful, the entire green box, sleepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't have to be on there. So just,
Oh, chill and grateful. Wow, what a great crowd. Nobody's spent. Oh, we got some despair. We can round this all out.
Right. So and then also, what are you doing right now that's helpful to associate that feeling? So the other part so you enter it is, and then it's like, what are you doing right now that would help you identify what's happening in that moment? Well, you're maybe taking some time to take care of yourself. So that might be some of the positive feelings, or you might be really struggling with something, or it's on your mind. So you'd really think, what is it that's having me feeling this right now, right? And then the last question that happens both in the mood meter, but in your habit is, would you like to stay with this feeling or in this zone, or would you like to shift it? So and what I love about the app is that I can actually put, I think I want to shift it. I'm like, I'm a little too relaxed. I need to get a little more high energy or whatever. And then I will say, I want to shift it. And it will say, okay, well, here's a playlist with some music to upbeat. And it will actually provide you with some cool things that will work with this. So my tip that I use is, how would you use this with people in your life? You could actually make this quadrant with them. You could provide feeling words or have them brainstorm their own, explain them this grid, right? High energy, low energy. Or you could do something that my graduate students shared with us last night, which is really fun. So I teach graduate students in school counseling. And last night in our experiential group, they take turns doing a warm-up. And this was her warm-up on a scale of jack-o'-lantern. How are you feeling today? And I thought this was a brilliant way to both lighten the mood, but also we got some super real feeling words that came out of it. You identified your jack-o'-lantern, but then you had to explain 3 emotions that went along to find how you're feeling right now. And it was a super powerful thing, because even like square number 3 had both positive energy within it as well as the low. So it kind of went along with the mood meter. Like there were some strong emotions that could be uncomfortable. There were also strong emotions that could be comfortable, right? So there was a variety of that. So I just thought that was delightful. So I had to throw that in. All right. So that was practice number 1. I'm going to back up a little and give you a foundational understanding. So this is emotion contagion. And I don't know if you can just raise your hand, either turn your camera on and raise your hand, or raise your hand below. How many of you heard of the concept of emotion contagion? See anybody? A few? Not everybody. So I'm going to just show you this quick NPR video about it. And as you're listening to it, I really want you to think about where you experience this in your life and with whom you might experience it. And then what do you do with it? And can you monitor it in a certain way?
This is Invisibilia. I'm Elise Spiegel, and I'm
it wasn't playing.
Lulu Miller. And today,
Why isn't it showing me the video?
this is Invisibilia.
No.
I'm sure there's a little button.
Well, I'm sure there is. Sorry, I love that. And this goes back to the community agreements about grace.
And
I wonder if I have to go out of this and get it on my.
Oh, I think that's.
Boy, it's embedded in my regular PowerPoint, but for some reason it's not showing here on the Zoom. I wonder if it will let me go here.
Lulu Miller.
No.
Techies, anybody, please feel free to jump in this moment. I think you have to get out of your PowerPoint and then do it. Okay. Is that right?
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm not techie either. I'm with you.
Well, it's a bummer is that it worked, of course, at home, you know.
Can you start it on your computer, Barbie, and then share your screen?
I bet you we could probably do that. No, we have two very challenged people, but that's cool.
Oh, I want to see it, and I don't want to take I really want you to see it. So, Mary, is your hand up to help or with a question? Sorry, I just see that now as I'm trying to get myself.
Hold on, I gotta find it.
Yeah, you should. You should be able. Am I still sharing my screen?
Is this how moods spread?
No, it's
how to make moods. Well, this is just not that easy. Oh, I found it.
Yeah, it's a pretty pop. Yeah, I have it here. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes,
okay.
You are.
Okay, let me see if can you see my screen here or no?
No.
Invisibilia. I'm Elise Spiegel.
Do you see? Is it moving?
Oh.
Can you see my screen?
Guys, welcome to Forward. We're a new type of doctor's office that's providing
Hey, Barbie, let me go ahead. You want to take that off? Because I still got
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh my God, I gotta get out of this now. Sorry, that's all me. My bad.
You can always mute if that ever happens again. Okay, here we go. So hopefully.
I'm Lulu Miller. Today, we're looking at the ways in which we're all invisibly connected to each other.
I'll tell you how we first started to come across the notion of contagion.
This is Dick Ratson. He and his wife and colleague, Elaine Hatfield, are psychological researchers from the University of Hawaii.
We were therapists for a while, for about 15 years. And we remember a client who came in who was very animated. She was talking very quickly and energetically. But I found I started to yawn. And Elaine started to yawn. And I wasn't tired at all. So why were we yawning? And what we think was going on is that we were picking up underneath her cascade of words, depression.
That was their idea, that the depression was somehow being telegraphed to them non-verbally. So they looked into it and found out that indeed, emotions leak out a person's face in these very measurable, consistent ways called micro-expressions. Split-second expressions of fear,
Grief,
shame,
joy,
sadness. What Dick and Elaine then added to the equation after years of research is that one way we might contract these emotions is through that same old dance. Because our faces, unbeknownst to us, actually imitate the tiny micro expressions we see on other people, our eyebrows bound in synchrony with someone else's surprise, or droop with someone else's sadness. The strange result is that the corresponding emotion is produced inside us. That's right. Because, as has now been well documented, one of the ways that emotions are produced is from the outside in. We get real pale little reflections of what others are thinking and feeling. And for Dick and Elaine, the result of this realization of learning about hundreds of experiments in which we so readily contract each other's emotions and thoughts and breath is that even though you walk around thinking of yourself as an individual,
that we're each individual entities who live in our own universe and control our own universe. I think that's a delusion. Would you agree with that, Elaine?
Yes, I would. We're going to slip in to being like the company we keep.
it's like without quite being aware of it, we are all one organism, a heaving, swirling organism, contracting the feelings and thoughts of the people around us.
We're all going to slip into the, like the company we keep. I just find that just to be really powerful. So now, let me slip out on that. All right, are you still seeing my PowerPoint? Yes or no?
Yes, yes, we see it, yes.
Yes.
All right, but now I don't see where I need to share it, so. All right. So how might this information that you just kind of observed about emotion contagion inform your actions and thoughts? Now, what emotion do you pass on the most and what emotion do you catch? So I'd love you to throw in the chat one or two emotions actually that you wish you want to pass on, the emotions you want to pass on the most, okay? Give me, or 2 to 3 emotions you really want to pass on to people in your world. And what is one emotion that you tend to catch? So throw it in the chat here.
We have smile and laughter, joy and hope, positive energy, joy, friendly. They want to pass clarity, but they tend to catch anxiety the most.
Oh, I'm so glad that came up. I was hoping that would be it, right? Mm-hmm. Anxiety is probably, well, and we know, right? Researchers know this, and Delaney, my friend, could pop into on this in a heartbeat, that this is the fastest growing, most commonly diagnosed disorder in youth. I've heard anywhere from 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 before the age of 18 will be diagnosed with it. But then you throw in all those things I showed you in the roller coaster, and anxiety is just legit, right? You know, fear, yeah. So what researchers have found out is that we are far actually more susceptible, unfortunately, to catching these negative emotions than we are to catching positive emotions, right? Kind of supporting our intention, right? How we have this intention. If we know that, if we have that mindset, and we know that our negative emotions are more catching, then we need to be more intentional about being aware of them and regulating them so that we are becoming the person that wants to pass on the smile or the joy or the recognition or the laughter or the hope under the challenging time, right? Kind of goes back to the thumper rule of life. Although I use that example, my students don't know who Thumper is. I feel like, hey, I'm just really old now. It's just what's happened. Like they haven't seen Bambi. We need a Bambi revival. Haven't we revived every other movie? Okay, that's completely off topic, but I'm just saying it needs to happen. We need a Bambi revival. Although that's a sad, sad movie in many ways. Maybe we just need a Thumper revival. Maybe that's what we need, just a Thumper revival. Okay, that's how I'm leaving it. I'm off that one now. I'm sorry. All right, foundational practice number 2. Putting your energy, emotions, and relationship toward what you can control. So this is one where everybody needs their piece of paper. So you're going to get a piece of paper. I'm going to walk you through this activity. And I really want you to engage in it because I want you to do something with it afterwards. You will not need to share anything except for maybe how the experience felt to you. But I really want you to try. So I'm going to give you a quick second to get your piece of paper. Just a blank white piece of paper is great. So the first thing you're going to do is just put your hand in the middle of the paper and you're going to trace your hand all the way around. Today with my 6th graders, I was having them draw themselves and we were talking about the person we show and the person we hide in the back. And they were like so intimidated about drawing themselves. Like we all get so intimidated, but I think tracing your hand is probably low hanging fruit, you know? So there, you can't even really see because of my blurred background. The joy of the blur is not really helpful when it comes to something like that. Okay. So I'm going to kind of guide you through how this concept. So this is a very concrete activity that you can do. Many of you have heard of your circle of control, but I just landed on the hand when I started thinking about this back when it all first happened. I literally can remember the day. It was a Friday of February, when my principal was like, I don't know if we're going to be back on Monday. And then, hello, we were back. You know, I mean, we weren't back. They were called school and everybody had to leave and you had to get your stuff. And then we had to invent how we were going to do outreach to kids. So what I want us to do right now, though, is within your hand, I want you to write down everything right now in your life that you have control over. Everything that you have control over. Put that in the middle of your hand. I'm just going to give you like 3 minutes to do the best you can to brainstorm. You can always add to it later on, but try to fill it up. Use your fingers, your palm, thumb. I should have background music, sorry. Take it out. One more minute. Really push yourself. Just like with anything you do with brainstorming, the first 10 things are easier. The first 7 things come quickly. Push yourself even harder. What are the things you can control? Go to some minutia, not just like my emotions. Go beyond that. You control where you work. You control what you eat. You control what you don't eat. Control how much water you drink every day, whether you exercise or not. Who you hang out with, who you don't hang out with. All right. I know you could expand that because then you could probably fill your hand with massive things that you have control over. So on the outside of your hand now, I want you to write outside your hand, all around the outside of the hand here. I want you to write down the things you do not have control over. They are not in your wheelhouse to have control over. What is in the outside of your hand? You know, remember the roller coaster, right? The mask wearing, the hand washing, the vaccinations. That's not your timer. Keep going. You got another minute on this. How we respond.
This is pretty great. Just want to add.
So I want to tell you how powerful this is, because I want everybody, if you feel it or can do it and can turn your camera on, and if you just want to mute and just show me your hand, because I want to show you why this works and why you can do this. If you have children that are challenged or therapists are challenged, I want you to just show me your physical hand. Actually, hold just your hand. Thank you. Thank you for those with your camera on. I appreciate it a lot. I want you to make a fist, right? Everything in your fist is what you have the power to control, right? This is your power. This is what you control, everything in your hand. And when you hold your hand like that, everything that's outside of it just falls away. You don't have any power of those things outside your hand. You have to let those things go and remember what's inside your hand. This is what you hold. I find that this visual image is very powerful to people because they start to see the power within themselves. It's different than a circle of control because it's your hand and it's your power. Remember, emotions are contagious. So if we learn that we have this power to manage them and we start doing the practice, I'm not saying it's easy. We know the struggle is hard. We're going to make mistakes along the way, but if we can remind ourselves in a grounded moment, this is a grounding exercise of like a practice of I have this control. And the reason I wanted you to create it, make it, is I'd really love you to have it So here's one that I made. I made it with my students initially. I made it right at the beginning when we had to be apart. I just kind of made this activity up as a kind of a concrete activity. And I've done it with staff and adults, but to put it where it was, I was doing an example for my students to understand that, you know, these are the controls that you have, and so you visually, if you're struggling with something, make a hand that's perfectly what you need to remember you control. So if it is that relative that you can't control, if it is that behavior choice, that boss that you're struggling with, the Department of Education, whatever the struggle is, the school board, it's outside your circle, right? And so if you have a visual that as a trigger, a reminder, you just know it's a concrete practice that will really reset you in a way to feel powerful, to focus on what you really can control and the power within that. So, all right, foundational practice number 3. Thanks for sticking with me. All right. So I know this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek gift that I have here, but the point is just to carry on with what we already have in life that's going right. So focusing on what's going right. So that is the name of my book. And again, because I'm blurred, you can't really see it, but I have a book called There's Always Something Going Right for Educators. And it's my 2nd edition with my co-author, which is great. And it's just finding that lens. Positive psychology has really found that your ability to recognize what's going right, even under a challenging moment, is really supporting your well-being. And it really seems to provide that regulation that is needed when you feel out of control, right? Because even in an out of control moment, there's always something you get to control. There's always something that you're able to focus on. So I want to give you some mindsets around this related to this practice. And then we're going to I'll probably have to pop out and show you a video that probably won't run in this thing again. But, oh, it's okay. I'm just being, there's always something going right. The PowerPoint's working. So
you have no control.
Yep, no control over that. Well, I probably do if I figured it out or problem solved it or talked to my IT person. But I want to give you some ways to do this, some concrete ways to keep yourself focused on what's going right. So I've written about it. It's in my parenting book, but I talk about it. I want you to consider the difference between a complaining person and a complaint. A complaining versus complaint. So a complaint is a noun. It's a thing. It has an endpoint, right? There's something you could probably do about a complaint, right? For example, my schedule is heinous this year at work. And I teach life skills classes to my students in the middle school, and they loaded up my Tuesday with 5 classes in a row. I'm like, if there was a crisis in my school as a school counselor, I'm not available, or if I am, then these kids are just in life skills are just going to be like, well, I guess we're doing nothing today, So I just, I could complain about it and go to my coworkers and say, this is really awful, and complain to my boss, but actually trying to get a problem solved about it is really the key. So it had an issue. I work with another teacher. We swapped some classes, and today was the very first day I didn't teach 5 classes in a row, and I got so I was available for some other situations, which was very helpful. But complaining goes on and on and on. And what researchers have found out is that complaining actually, it does 2 things, and none of them are very good. One is because it's emotion contagion. If I start complaining to my friend Delaney, she, who lives with empathy at the core of her being, will start to take on my complaining and feel the same pain I'm feeling. And now she's got to deal with that angst and take it on into a different level, right? So that's one thing that's really bad about it. But the other ironic and sad thing about it is it's addictive. Not just the contagion part, but researchers, I think Michael Gurian was working with some researchers who talked about this. He found out that you actually release a neurotransmitter, and my doctoral friend will correct me if oxytocin is not a neurotransmitter. Is it not? It's a hormone? I don't, yeah.
Sure feels good, whatever that is. Yeah.
It's the thing that feels good, exactly, right? Neurotransmitter makes you feel good. It's a connector. You release it when you have sex, right? So but that's what happens when people complain, more women than men, that's a bond. So it's a bonding chemical. That's what oxytocin is. It's a bonding chemical. And that's what happens when we're complaining. So you can see it becomes a circle, right? And if you're really trying to get out of the negative space of it, you have to move a complaining situation to a complaint. right? So that's the first thing. I think the other thing I want to point out is ways that you pause. So for a lot of us, when we're around a lot of maybe negative people or negative situations, we need reminders to name what is going right now. So in some of my books, I put the idea of like a Post-it note. So you'd have a Post-it note that you would just have that would be randomly, I just lost my screen. Hopefully it'll come back on, but if not, can you see me?
Yep, you're good. Yep.
I don't know, I just lost my screen. So you put a Post-it note, just like in random places, maybe behind, like if complaining happens in your car, you might put it on your rear view mirror, not blocking what you can see behind you. You would put it in your kitchen. If it happens in the kitchen, you would put it as a physical reminder, what is going on right now that I could call out as something positive. What can I name about my child's behavior? What can I name about my partner's behavior? What can I call out right now? Because that's the cool thing about this evidence-based practice. Your ability to actually focus on what's going right, the opposite of complaining, will actually elevates and releases within you dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. And it's addictive. Remember, emotions are contagious. So if I decide I'm going to call out the greatness of Melanie and Barbie and my friends right now, not only do you start to feel better about what's yourself, you get a little dose of that, of those neurotransmitters and those happy chemicals. I call them my little happy drugs. But I get it too, because I gave it to you, and anybody who overhears it also gets it. So these are practices that we have to be coaching sometimes, especially with the heaviness of the world around us. And so we need sometimes some tricks to be able to do that, right? One little quick thing I want to do is a version of kind of cognitive reappraisal, which we'll do as one of our last practices here. But this idea of actually, when you're worried about something, instead of focusing maybe on the dread, shift it and say, I'm so excited. So this researcher did this crazy study. Dr. Allison Woods Brooks did this study, and she had 3 groups of students, 3 groups with 3 different tasks. And one was told to just remain calm under a stressful situation. And another one was told that under the stressful situation, if they were to say, I'm so excited, I know this sounds like a bogus thing, but the study really got me excited, was that they actually found that they were more calm during the experience and actually performed better during the experience. That is the power of our mindset. Our brains are just incredible. And finally, I want to say we want to be realistic optimists, right? There's a lot of evidence that says we want to think and reflect on and emphasize the good things in life. Realistic optimists are grateful for what they appreciate. They don't complain about something bad out of their circle of control, right? Because it's like, what can I do about it? You could be disappointed and frustrated. You could say, I have a complaint about the situation. I can't understand why people blah, but then you move on it, because realistic optimists don't feel like nothing can hold them back from what they want to achieve in their life. This is one of my newest favorite authors. This is Elena Aguilar, who wrote Onward about resilience. And I highly encourage you to look her up and her work, because realistic optimists also believe in abundance. So what do you see?
A white screen with a black dot.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Anything to be said about that?
It's clean.
It's clean. I will tell you, and I appreciate that you said a white screen. A lot of times when I show this slide to people, people say, I see a black dot. It's what our eye is drawn to most often in life. And that is because the black dot is the most interesting thing perhaps on this white screen. It's what we notice, right? And I kind of attribute that analogy to how problems and conflict work in our world. You come home from work, and if people say, how did your day go? And if you're not coming in with 3 things that went well, then sometimes people, children, others, people in life feel like they have to have a story. They have to have a conflict, a problem, something to complain about. And the cool thing about conflict is that it's usually got a beginning, a middle, and an end, lots of drama and stories that go along with it. And it's meaty, right? Whereas all that white space of everything that went right sometimes just meant flow. We were in the flow. We said hello to people. We got things done. It was a positive moment. We had some good phone calls. We connected with our friends. We read a cool article. And then there was this one thing, the dot, right? And so just being aware that the dot is a real thing, and our awareness of it is kind of the intention behind this, right? So again, remember, these are intentions, not joining in the label or mindsets, focusing on what is going right, right? And coaching the mindset of that same growth in the other people around us, right?
Tammy, can I interrupt you for one moment?
Yeah, you can.
Everybody's really interested in all the authors and books that you've been mentioning.
Yeah.
I put yours in the chat already, but can you tell me those and we can put them in the chat or maybe email them out to people too?
Yeah. Well, Elena Aguilar, so ELENAAGUILAR, and her book is Onward, and she's written also a bunch of other books about coaching. She's an educator and a coach, but sign up for her blogs, because even if you're not in education, you're gonna like it. So
Tammy, what was the previous screen? You had it on for a microsecond, so I wasn't that okay.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, this is one I showed before. So I just revisited the screen. This was the intentions of, like, these are the intentions we talked about with positive psychology and nurtured heart approach, right? Our mindsets to see all people and ourselves as capable of positive change. So it's just a reminder of why this works. It's based, it's evidence-based, and it's got just some, and it's just powerful. But because the earlier stuff of our foundational understanding is that we're wired for negativity, we also know that we have to have concrete practices in order to make it happen. And I'm hoping this works, because this has a little thing that might make it work.
It's working, Tammy.
Strike one. I'm the greatest hitter in the world. Strike two. I'm the greatest hitter in the world. Strike three. Wow. Great pitcher in the world. Let's go. Optimism. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for...
All right. I love that video. I never get tired of watching it. It still gives me goosebumps every time I watch it. But as Wayne Dyer has said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's really the power, right? To be able to see things and the potential behind things instead of the deficits or the messaging we give ourselves or the messaging we hear from people around us, right? So really, it's kind of shifting our lens. So this is our last practice we're going into right now. I think the intention here is to really go back to that person that you wrote down at the beginning of this presentation, or that situation, right? Where I wanted you to really think about, maybe it's just one trigger you have in that relationship with this individual, or maybe it's an ongoing relationship. And one of the pieces we understand then, and when we're thinking about a mindset around this, is that, you know, I had said earlier, seeing everybody as well-intentioned and just maybe not skilled yet. And also just really recognizing that there's a lot of fear and intention behind the negative communication. So the snapping person or the difficult moment comes from a place, you know, behavior is communication for my people in the room that are mental health specialists. So, you know, behavior is communication. And the hardest thing I know is not to take that, as we say in Nurtured Heart world, the broken rule personally, but to lead with curiosity rather than judgment. It's really, really hard to lead with curiosity rather than judgment. But it is transformative to be able to go, this is another Elena Aguilar post-it that's above my desk at work. What can I learn right now? It's just beautiful. It's like in this moment. So when I'm triggered, I can say, what can I learn right now about this moment, about this kid who's saying this, about this adult who's responding in a way to me. So we're going to practice. This isn't an example. This is our practice. So I want you to actually fully engage like you did with a hand. Okay. It's different and it's a little more personal. So it might be a little more uncomfortable, but heck, you've been hanging out with me for an hour. So what the heck, just throw yourself in. It's our last practice of the night. I want you to take a look at that. Pick one of these two situations and you can write down on your paper just what you're feeling. Okay. So here's one. Your boss sends you an email that says, can you pop by my office at 3:30 today before you leave? Or you come home and the sink is full of dishes left by your kids or your partner. All right. What are your feelings? What are your thoughts? Can you go ahead and throw some of those feelings and thoughts right now into the chat? You could just like boss. It doesn't really matter because some people would have the same response no matter what.
We have frustration. Mine was like, always go to the worst case scenario. Frustration. Why?
And give me some thoughts. Like what is the?
Well, that one, the feeling was frustration. The thought was like, why? Rephrase that. Curiosity. Very positive.
I love that. I love that. I would love it. Anybody would like walk with me through this. I promise it will be safe. I'm not going to do, but it'd be really great for other people if somebody would walk through this practice with me. Would anybody be willing to do that?
And a lot of people are saying,
oh, what do you mean?
Okay, who said they'd do it?
I will. Hi, my name is Alyssa.
Oh, thank you, Alyssa. Okay, Alyssa, which one of these two would you like to pick?
Any, either or.
You get to pick. You got to pick one. It's yours to pick.
Let's talk about boss because dishes don't really bother me.
Okay, good. That's exactly right. Right. Okay.
I've known real problems. Dishes don't bother me at all.
Okay. There we go. There we go. Okay. So what are your feelings in that moment, Lisa?
Well, I'd be just curious, I guess. I mean, if I had a deadline I missed, I'd be worried a little bit. But if I know that all is good on my part, I'd be just curious.
So, and what are your thoughts?
The thoughts are, I'll know when I go.
Okay. All right. It's funny because I had this very same thing, and I wish I was as confident as you. So I did this. I did this exercise with a bunch of 4th grade parents. We had when all the parents could be in the building. I missed that. And all the and I asked the dads, because it was actually dads. It was like dads and special friends day or whatever. And the dads were there with their 4th graders, or maybe they're 4th graders, I think they were. And I asked them what they were feeling in the situation. And nearly every dad, what do you think they said? If I just use the one on the left.
Well, I know my dad would immediately go to, what did you do? You know?
Yep. What did you miss? I love that you had the confidence to go, well, I got all my pieces in a row, because I think a lot of people will be like, do I? Like I always have, I feel like I have all my stuff in a row. So this is actually a situation that happened to me. I got that email. And I'm like, okay, what did I screw up? Did I miss a meeting? Did I, not respond to an email? Did I say something inappropriate in an email? Did some parent report me on something? What ball did I drop? Right. So this is kind of what it is. So this is the foundational practice of cognitive reframing, where you actually practice, what if there is another way to see something, which is sometimes hard for people to recognize. And I know that I won't be able to see this because this was in, oh, well, I don't know. Now it's showing up. Should I see if it works? Probably won't work. Wow.
Working.
Our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors continually affect each other, and it's easy to develop negative patterns where unhelpful thoughts lead to unhelpful feelings and actions. Sometimes this can become a vicious cycle. Many of us don't realize that we can influence this process and that this can improve our mental health. The best way to deal with these unhelpful thoughts is to recognize them, challenge them, and see if you can replace them. Some people call this the catch it, check it, change it approach. With practice, this can help us look at perceived problems from a different perspective. For example, you might be worried about an important task you have to do at work, convinced it will go wrong and everyone will think you're a failure. Rather than immediately accepting this thought and feeling even worse, take a moment to catch it and check it. Ask yourself whether there's good evidence for it, or if there are other explanations. Try thinking about what you would say to a friend who was thinking this way. Finally, see if you can change the thought for a more positive one. Maybe, I'm prepared, I've put a lot of work in, and I'm going to do my best. Sometimes you will be able to change the thought to a positive one, but don't worry when at other times you can't. There are no right or wrong answers. It's about learning to think more flexibly and be more in control. By catching the thought, checking it, and seeing if you can change it, with practice, you can help break the negative cycle.
So, I like it. So this idea of kind of there's all kind of cognitive reappraisal, cognitive reframing. There's all kinds of terms that are used to kind of do this approach, but it's very evidence-based. It goes back to the things I was saying at the beginning of our presentation. It's about self-awareness. So first you have to know, what is the emotion I'm feeling, right? And what is the thought? Because just because you think it doesn't make it true. This is a challenge when we work with youth, because a lot of youth really believe whatever they think is the truth. And so that's a really critical thing to be coaching kids around. Like, what evidence do you have that this is the truth of what it is? And this tip in there is like, what would you say to a friend, is a really helpful strategy to coach not only yourself. Like if you had your friend, what would your friend tell you right now about that ridiculous thought you're having? That would talk you out of that so you wouldn't go down this pathway. Is what you're telling yourself helpful? Is it going to help you regulate yourself or get through that challenging situation? Like the panic feeling you might have, right? Ultimately, you heard in the video talk about being like flexible thinking, right? We want to be the person, there could be other outcomes. So the first, it's this idea, recognizing I have this emotion, and then you're challenging this negative thought, Look at, I can see my typo error right now. There needs to be a question mark as am I being realistic? That really drives me crazy. Just going to take a regulation moment around that. So what is there evidence for or against this? Well, there's the evidence. I'm looking at it, no question mark. But anyway, the point being is that when you do this, the idea is that you're pressing pause long enough to come up with alternative thoughts, right? So like what could be happening with the boss? So could somebody maybe just unmute? What else could be happening? Why else could your boss be calling you into your office? Back to these.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
So I had a situation like this once, and I wasn't worried going into boss's office. I was curious because there's nothing going on, but I mean, things happen, there might be update on the client you need, things happen. I was curious, and amazing thing happened. And I think the more great things happen to people, the more they would be able to move towards that thinking, I guess, line of thinking. But amazing thing happened because I was so stressed with so many clients at the time, and it was a prolonged period of difficult, issues going on with multiple clients, and I was just overwhelmed for a while. And to reward me, my boss decided to pay for a trip to see my parents, and that was a very kind and beautiful surprise, a very expensive surprise. And amazing things happen, just not very often.
Right. But that's an unforgettable, like you'll never forget that.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. And that is, that's kind of like something that we need to nourish, that like, best possible outcomes, because not always they are the worst, although there's a lot of them.
Yeah. So. Right. I love that.
I think we're sending good vibes to your boss right now. Like,
yeah.
We're not going to ask for your work and if we could work for them, but that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that really is, I always feel like this is something that bosses need to hear and cohorts need to hear, is like, we don't hear it enough. We're not acknowledged enough for our day-to-day. Like if you were doing a nurture heart training with me, I'm always like, what does it take for you to show up at work on time? Like you had to plan what you were going to wear. You had to figure out your schedule and timing. You had to, if you had childcare, you had to deal with childcare or school issues. You had the traffic routes. You had to make sure your car had gas in it. You had to pre-plan your day in multiple ways. Get your lunch organized. Take care of yourself in multiple ways, and then being present for whatever the next task is once you walk in the door. But people just go, "Hey, good morning." And there's very little acknowledgement for really how hard we just work to just be as human beings, right? Not human doings, but human beings. And I think a pause and a recognition about that is pretty critical, right? And I love that mindset. So thank you for sharing that, Alyssa, because I feel
can I share like a really quick thing that it was really powerful for me when I was studying this? Like, can I actually change a mindset? And I was just driving down the road, like frantic to get somewhere, and a rock popped up on the road and just smashed right in front of my windshield and just cracked my windshield. And that the ordinary reaction is like, oh my gosh, what truck did that rock come from? Like, just my day is ruined. And I just challenged myself and thought, how can I turn this around? And so I became grateful for my windshield for protecting me from the rock. And I was like, God, I love windshields. And thank you, windshield. And I just felt myself completely just go, I'm so glad we're not in horse-drawn carriages anymore, because I'd be dead. So it was just like, okay. And I lost all that, like, oh. And I was like, oh, this is great. Thank you.
Right.
Windshield.
Yeah. It's like a press pause, as we kind of call it, reset in your chart, but it's like a reset of yourself to go, there's another way to look at the situation, right? And there's another alternative, right? You're reframing it 1 or 2 other ways, 2 to 4 other ways that it could be happening, right? Yeah, that windshield saved you. It also maybe helped you pause. You could have avoided accidents. I always love hearing those phenomenal stories about people who miss planes and the planes have issues, or whatever the story is. There is that practice, right? The alternative explanation. So this is a more complex psychology approach, but I want to give you something a little simpler. Which is this practice. Wait, I have this weird button. Is it blocking your view or just me? Auto setting. I don't know if it is, but I don't want to touch anything because I'm afraid I'm going to blow it as we finish this up tonight. So this is just a really beautiful, simple thing. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the greater good in science out of UC Berkeley. So we should put that one in the chat out there. But this is one of the practices. I mean, everybody does. I mean, they didn't invent this practice, but they have a fabulous website and they share all kinds of evidence-based things about well-being that I use. You can use it with students, you can use them with your family, and there's all kinds of support for her. But it's just another practice for rewiring your negative response. So, can we just take a second to do it? I think we should take a second to do it, because I want you to have one more practice that you exit with, okay? List 5 things that make in your life that you feel in your life that is enjoyable, enriching, and worthwhile at this moment. 5 things. Hopefully that wasn't too hard. It was funny. People that know me well, I actually put research on my paper, which is like, I was like, even as I wrote it, I was like, really? Did you just write research? I did just write research. Okay. So now you kind of hold on to these, right? So this is the idea that when you're feeling upset or frustrated, right? So you go back, I'm going back to Barbie's example of like, well, in that moment, like if I'm valuing my life or my connection with human beings, that would have been taken from me, or that would have been here. But this is on the 4th part here. Then list 3 things that can help you see the brighter side of the situation. So I want you to first come up with a situation that's that challenge. So go back to that one that's just the situation that drives you crazy. So it could be the boss that would call you in, or it could be just a difficult cohort situation, not feeling supported, maybe invisible in a relationship or with a friend, or just always having your child argue with you, whatever it is, someplace where you're just not feeling that, right? And take a second just to write that down. That's the most recent situation when something didn't go your way or you felt frustrated, irritated, or upset. You know, it's funny, I did this exercise when I was putting this together. And so I'm doing a different situation. And it's kind of cool. So just saying. So now now the idea, so it's we call this activity silver lining. It's very similar to cognitive reframing. It's just a little simpler. Now, based upon these things you really appreciate, take 3 ways to look at the other side of it, the bright side of it. So not all of us are going to be as lucky as Alyssa to be able to maybe have our boss fly us home to see family across the world. But what else is another thing what is something that you could get out of that situation? So I'm going to share mine. And I would love it if anybody would be willing to unmute and share theirs. You don't have to turn on your camera if you don't want to, but if you would, that would be cool. But if not, it's okay. So my 5 positive strengths of what I was like, things I enjoy doing. These are just the first 5 I popped up in my head. Really didn't spend any time doing it more, you know, thinking of it more often than playing with my dog, spending time with my husband, research, connecting with kids, both mine and the ones at work, and golf. Recently got into golf, not very good, but enjoying it. And my real challenging situation that my friend and cohort in this knows is not feeling supported at work recently. So, and then more details, but I need to do that. So, but then looking at what are 3 ways, the bright side of the situation for me is that how it allowed me to connect really strongly with other people, not in a complaining factor, but just in finding a large supporting network that was just really empowering and validating, that it focused me to exercise when I was really stressed, which I do anyway, but like to not just to really do that in a positive way. And then just to tackle my next direction. So it was a very positive thing for me. So I would love somebody else to be able to share their silver lining experience, if anybody would be willing to do that.
Okay, I can do that if you want. Delaney here.
Thank you.
Walking outside, talking with great friends, watching hummingbirds, eating healthy, and getting more organized in life. And then my stressor is at the Apple store, having to buy a new major computer and really stressed about that. And then I just said the silver lining was just that I had a good encounter with the guy at the store that felt really, talking about human connections, felt really good. I know that I have that I will figure this out, and that I have my therapist to talk about my money issues. So I have support.
Oh, I love it. That's great, Delaney. Thanks for sharing that. And I don't know if anybody else would be willing, you don't have to put your whole thing in there, but if you want to throw in the chat any parts of your silver lining, I think we'd love to end hearing about your silver linings. So we don't even have to know the backstory, as I often say in your chart. Sometimes when people want to complain, you don't need to know the backstory. You just want to know where are you going next, the front story. So where's your front story? Where are you going out of this place? Because that's how powerful your mind is. That's really what evidence says, is our minds control so much of our well-being and our emotions, what we decide to pay attention to, what we decide to give energy to. So I really hope that you consider that as you walk away tonight with hopefully some new practices you can share and you can adopt, and some mindsets as well. So this is my email. That's my website. But I'm open. Yeah. Any questions that you have right now or any clarification? With our time that I left. Look, I left time, Barbie.
I'm so proud of you. I know you're like, I can't fill this time. Yes, we can. Together we can do it.
I know I can fill it. That's not my issue. It's like,
I know.
Be on time.
This was really, truly amazing. And thank you so much for taking your time and everybody for taking their time.
Yeah.
This is beautiful. It's something we should focus more on. I think we need a lot more of these sessions just in daily life. So if you were here tonight, spread that and work on changing those thought patterns and finding that silver lining. I think it's just a beautiful theory. It's going to help us get through all this.
Right. It's there. It's just a decision you make. So
yeah.
It's a decision. You're just going to decide. You're going to find what's going right, and you're going to not be that person that joins in the negativity, because that evidence says if you do that, you're going to sleep better. You're going to feel better, and other people around you are also going to feel better by that intentional choice. So
thank you, Tammy. We had a very active chat tonight, a lot of participants, and there's nothing better than that. Just a lot of people resonating with what you're saying, which is why we're here. So thank you, everybody.
That is great. And then, it's fun. Now I've stopped sharing so I can finally look at the chat, right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Delaney, for participating and sharing your silver lining story too. Thank you, Melissa, for being willing to go through some of that piece as well. So, and do reach out if you have any questions. If you need something that I can forward you, we can. And all this was taped, so you'll have access to both the PowerPoint and the information that's here, which also includes the chat, as I recall. So
you can watch it to start your day every day. Just get up an hour early.
I'm not good at an hour early, but I can get up a few minutes early, maybe. Yeah.
At least part of it.
Yeah. Oh, cool. There's other things in here too. I love the chat. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. You have a great night. Thank you, Barbie, for inviting me to present to your group and for the great work you continue to do. I just really
thank you.
I think you guys do amazing work, and I need to partner with you again, bring you back to my school. Okay.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Please do. All right.
Take good care. Good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.